Hi everyone. I'm really sorry about the delay with getting it started. I wasn't able to log on to the Zoom for a while, but I'm here now. So thank you all for waiting, and I'm sorry about that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get up my slides. Bear with me just a second. Okay, so can one of you just pop in the chat and just let me know that you can see that? Just make sure I've got the chat up as well. I think the chat's okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, you can just pop any questions you have in your Q&A. Thank you. But I hope that you can see my screen. I can see a blank screen. Okay, let's try that again. I don't know why it's not liking it today. Can we see that now? It's just loading. Okay. But now, is this doing anything? Not yet. That's annoying. I'm sorry about that, everyone. I'm not really sure what's happening. Right, we'll try once again. Right. Can you see that? Yes. Okay, great. Yeah, really sorry about the delay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Okay, perfect. So let's get started straight away because I'm aware of the time. If we go over by a few minutes, then I'm going to hang around for any questions you have. So what we'll do is we'll fly through this, and then I'm going to hang around for as long as we need to answer any questions. And if any of you need to run off, feel free to. I hope that works out okay for everyone. So thank you for coming. So my name's Ella. I'm currently a graduate entry medical student at Oxford, which basically means instead of coming to do medicine at undergrad, I did an undergraduate degree first, and then I now do the graduate entry course at Oxford. Instead of the 6 years, it's a condensed course, so it's just the 4 years. I applied for medicine at undergrad, and I did get in, but I didn't get my grades, so I took a bit of time out. So I did clin sci at Bradford, decided if I still wanted to do it afterwards, I'll try and reapply. And then I did, and then I decided that I still wanted to do medicine, so gave it a go and got into Oxford, which was really lucky. So that's where I am at the moment, and I'm really enjoying it. I've sat it, as I said, I sat the BMAT a couple of times. It hasn't really changed too much, and I just remember how stressful it can be, particularly if you're doing, the UCAT at the same time. And the whole application process in itself, I know how rubbish it can be. So as I said, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but I've learned a lot from these experiences, and hopefully I can help you guys out too. So the BMAT itself, obviously we're having this talk today and it's fairly early on. The BMAT obviously isn't until like October, November time, but it's really important to understand what it is now so that you can plan out a revision plan and plan out how you're going to apply for it, or if you need to get financial support as well, the earlier the better, so you can get it sorted and then you're not rushing at all at the end. So it usually costs £78, and you book it through the Cambridge admissions testing website. However, it's worth noting as well that you can apply to be reimbursed for it. Well, it used to be a reimbursement, and now what they do is if you meet the criteria, the financial criteria, you can get it for free, which is what I did. I think the process changed a bit now. So now what you do is you apply for a voucher, and they'll give you a voucher, and then when you go to book the test, you enter the voucher code, and it will mean it's free for you. So you don't have to get reimbursed. That's just something to bear in mind if you're worried about the price of it. Similar for the UCAT, they have a similar process as well. where you can be able to sit the test for free. So I'm just telling you guys that just to bear in mind. And then in terms of the test results as well, when you sit it, you'll be given like a link to this one of the Metro test systems, check your results. And that will all be given to you on the test day. In terms of a coupon available for international students, someone has just asked. I'm just going to pause my sharing and just check, because I had that website up earlier. Let's see what they said. So what I believe is that it's different rules for international students. So if it's outside of the EU anyway, it ends up being £104. And in terms of they've got application form to see if you meet the criteria. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what that criteria is. Although I'm looking on the website now and it says only UK candidates are eligible to apply, unfortunately. So I'm sorry about that. So if you're a UK student, then you're able to apply for that voucher. And I believe if it's international, then the cost is then £104, which unfortunately can't get reimbursed. So in terms of the test dates, the registration opens on the 1st of September. So that's when you will go online, get your voucher code if you need it, or pay for it as you need it. And then you can select a test centre, which are in most cities in the UK. Sometimes people can get them done at through their schools and things like that, and their school or their college, sixth form college can be a test centre, but if not, there will be plenty of test centres to go. You just go down, you sit and sit the exam. Again, if you need any additional time or modified papers or anything like that, then you do have time to apply for that by the 15th of September. And likewise, if you want to apply for a test voucher code, the deadline is 29th September this year. The actual test date this year is the 18th of October, and your results should be released on the 24th of November, and they usually are released on time. And if you want an inquiry into any kind of results you're able to do that afterwards. And it's worth bearing in mind, if you're applying to a BMAT registered university medical school, that they receive your results, I think, a few days before that you do, and they already start evaluating them in that process. And then you'll get information on how successful you are from any time from really November to March even. So it's a long process. So in terms of the schools that do take the BMAT in the UK, we've got obviously Brighton, Sussex, you've got Imperial, Lancaster, UCL, Cambridge and Oxford as well, and that's both for medicine and graduate entry medicine. So again, all of this information, by the way, is available on the website. I just thought I'd show you here, just to bear in mind. Most universities do the UCAT, but when you're applying to medicine, some people might find that instead of picking those 4 UCAT options, they might want to pick a couple of BMAT ones, because test results aren't the be all and end all, but some people might want to do it strategically. So think, if I really don't do very well in that UCAT, I have the chance to do well in the BMAT, and then I've split my kind of options between those 2 tests. So if I don't do as well in one, I'm not just, hindering my chances, if that makes sense. So it's just something to bear in mind. Another thing that's worth noting is that every year the number of applicants to medical schools are increasing, and it is getting more competitive, unfortunately, because it doesn't always mean that there are more spaces. They are trying to get more places at medical school, but again, it's not always possible due to funding and staff and everything like that. So as you can see from the stats for 2021, there's about 8,000 more applicants than there was in 2016. A lot of these as well are reapplicants. There's about double the number of reapplicants now. Again, just because it is difficult and competitive, but I just want you guys to know that if medicine is something you want to do, you can absolutely get there, no matter how long it takes you. Unfortunately, the process is it's a really difficult and lengthy application process, and the exams are difficult, but it's, as we'll go through now, you can do well in them, and there are always other options if you aren't successful first time round. It just gives you a chance to take a step back and reflect and see if it's something that you still want to do. So someone's asked about mattering if you graduate from a top university for medicine, or is it more important if you're top 3 of your uni? In the UK, most of the medical schools, it really doesn't matter whether you're at Oxford or if you're at Leeds, because the the way the medicine is taught is everyone has that same high standard of learning, and everyone is like knows the same stuff by the time they graduate. And how it works is they're changing around the ranking system now, but depending on where you want to go, whether you want to work in London or you want to work in more up north, or if you want to do certain specialisms like neurosurgery compared to, I don't know, geriatric medicine, then they look at rankings, and that's how well you do compared to everyone else in the country. So although, for example, at Oxford will be ranked within the uni each year, so you can see how you're doing against your peers, what's more important is after you graduate, that kind of ranking overall with people in the country, and then that will depend on where you're allocated for your junior doctor jobs. But it's all changing at the moment, and everyone ends up getting jumbled about anyway, so I don't want anyone to worry about that too much. And like I said, if you get into medicine, it's really great to get into medicine in itself, so no matter what university you end up at, you'll end up enjoying it and making the most of it and having a really good standard of education anyway. So I hope that answers your question. So in terms of the structure, you'll have 3 sections of the BMAT. So you've got your 60-minute thinking skills, which is your section 1. You've then got 30 minutes of scientific knowledge, which is your bio, chem, physics and maths. And then you have a 30-minute writing task, which is basically like a mini essay. And how you're scored is, so for sections 1 and 2, you're given a score from like 1 to 9, but you have to 1 decimal point, so you could have like a 6.7 score, for example. Whereas the section 3, which is the essay, is just scored 1 to 5, 5 being the best. And your quality of English, so just like your language, punctuation, everything like that, that's also scored from A to E, A being the best. Most people score a B or an A on their quality of language. So in terms of section 1, as I said, this is like your critical thinking kind of problem solving section. So if you look at the number of marks, again, this is what I've got off the website here, the total number of marks for this is 32, and you've got 60 minutes to do that, so it's just under 2 minutes per question. You'll find that some of the questions there's a lot of reading to do, and you may not actually have the time to sit and read through it from start to finish. You may actually have to basically pick out the key information, which I'll show you later when we look through a couple of example questions. And you'll find for other ones, it will be like identifying different shapes and things like that. So it's one of those sections where some people will find parts fairly easy and some people find other parts really difficult, but everyone will be different. So what is really important for the BMAT, which we'll talk about later, is just time management, because it goes by so quickly and there are actually loads of questions in not a very long amount of time. So it is really important to just keep your eye on the clock, which you will have in the corner of your screen, and then you can basically see if you're on track to doing well. Some of those questions will take you less than a minute to answer, which is good because that means you can build up your time a bit for the other questions. But what's important here is, particularly for section 1, it's all about practicing, because it's one of those where you can understand the principles of these kind of questions, understand problem solving and identifying patterns and picking out key bits of information from large bits of text. But if you don't practice enough, you won't get quick at it, and then by the time it gets around to the exam, you might not be to a point where you're comfortable with those questions, and then you might just find yourself running out of time at the end. So that's one of the main things for this section in particular. And then as we can see here for section 2, that's 30 minutes and it's 27 marks. So again, about a minute per mark. And then you've got questions on your 3 sciences and maths, and they're pretty equally split as well. It says it should be around GCSE level sciences. So in terms of revision, I'd really recommend looking at the CGP guides and that kind of thing. Also having a look at, just going over any existing notes you do have, as well as the practice questions. I'll talk to you a little bit about how you can access information on what specifically they're going to ask you. So as I said, your last section is your mini essay. So you've got 3 questions, you pick one and then you write about it, but you're limited to 1 A4 page. So you're not writing loads by any means. You are allowed to make notes before. So what I usually would recommend people to do is read the 3 questions. Don't spend a lot of time deciding which one you're going to answer. Pick one, write a few notes and just get cracking with writing. You can, I'd say, have 5 minutes at the start to decide on your question and make a brief plan. Someone's asked what exam board should we go through for BMAT section 2. I wouldn't say there's a specific exam board. I know that for example, I think I did AQA. So then I just used my AQA, some of the notes from there. But to be honest, any kind of general revision guide that you have should do a good enough job. But I'll show you what kind of content you should learn. Someone's also asked is there any A-level content for physics? We've seen some A-level content for the other sciences. This is the thing they've said in the past. They used to have on their website that it should be up to AS level, and then they've changed it because I had a look today and it said about mostly like secondary level GCSE sciences. Some of it can be in that bit of in between bit. So most of it you would have covered at GCSE, but there might be a couple of bits that go above and beyond. But again, you shouldn't worry about that too much because they have a syllabus of everything they can cover, and you'll know the kind of level from doing the past paper questions. So I wouldn't necessarily say, go away and read up on all this A-level stuff, because it won't be a good use of your time, because anything that you have learn is like you're all building on basic principles and building those up anyway for A-level. So you should be able to look at those questions and apply what you've learned in GCSE to answer it, if that makes sense. Okay, next. So on the admissions testing website, so it's called the, I know I've got a link here which you guys can't click unfortunately because it's in the thing. Let me see if I can, I think the chat might be disabled. Oh, it's not for me. I'm just gonna pop that in the chat, but this is basically the specification of what you need to know for, I'm just going to paste this in here, let me know if you can see it. Host and panelists, it should be to everyone. Let's try it again. Hopefully you can all access that. Again, please put in the question box if you can't. This is the specification. So what I would do, but again, this is just me, so by all means do whatever you're comfortable with. I think I printed it off. And I read it through and I thought about what I'd covered before. So I've put a little example here. So this is for the biology section. So this is what you're expected to know. So about communicable diseases, that it can be caused by bacteria, viruses, and fungi. And you're thinking here about the effect of immune system and HIV. And for example, here it's got medicines with understand the process of development of new medicines. So I know this sounds a little bit vague, but as long as you have a rough idea, if you can think of a couple of sentences for each of these syllabus points, this can also just help you feel more comfortable with the kind of stuff you can be asked. I'd say less so for biology, but more particularly for the chemistry and like physics and math sections, the syllabus is really specific, and it will also tell you what formulas you're expected to know. And for chemistry, I think you need to know, you're not given a periodic table, so you need to know like the properties of the elements and like the main groups and things like that. So it's worth going over those. But again, I'd suggest just having a look through this test spec document because it's really useful, and they won't ask you anything that's not on there. In terms of resources, obviously you have all your 6med and your social media pages, like the Discord and the group chat as well. I'll talk about some books in a second, but even on YouTube now, you can find like examples of people talking through BMAT and talking about what helped them and their top tips. So watch those, particularly in the early days before you set up a solid revision plan. It might just help you know how long you need to spend revising. There's also the 6med BMAT masterclass, and I've said this before, that you can pay for courses and tuition, but there's also many free online resources. So if obviously not everyone has the has the financial means to be able to pay for these things, and I know I didn't, so I ended up just using free resources. But if you, again, for any kind of books, there's some that are listed here about critical thinking if you are struggling with section 1. So again, thinking skills, critical reasoning, and practical introduction. I'd say those two, it might be worth reading, but seeing if you can access them in a library for whatever reason, that might be useful. And also in terms of books, if you were going to get any, have a look at secondhand, have a look on Amazon, eBay, library, friends. I think I borrowed them off some friends who'd already set the BMAT, but they've got your classic, your 700 practice questions one and the other ones as well. And again, there's a lot out there. But I'd say the most important thing is to do like the proper official mock exams and time yourself. And timing is the most crucial thing in this exam. So this just shows you like for 2021, the kind of average scores that people were getting. So you can see most people can I do my little laser pointer? I don't think I can. No, oh well. But you can see that most people are scoring around between one in the middle, kind of from 4 to like 5 kind of score. Specific university websites might have on their website cutoff scores, but again, this changes every year. So if you see it for previous years, it might be higher, it might be lower, it might be the same for the next year. So just bear that in mind. So for section 2, again, most people are kind of getting in this middle range here. As you can see, very few people do really, really well, scores of 8 and above. Not a lot of people do poorly either. Most people are kind of in the middle here. And the same for section 3 here. As I said, most people get an A for their quality of English, and the kind of main score that people get is like a 3A. But I think it is also achievable for most people to kind of get a 4A if you practice your essays, which I'll tell you about in a sec. Common mistakes people make is not allowing enough time to prepare for the exam. I know what I did was I basically decided to do little and often, because I know I'm a crammer and I always have been, and I tried not to do that for this BMAT. So I had like 2 months where I'd do like a couple of hours a day. Some days I did absolutely nothing. Some days I did more than that. I know I did more towards the end because I felt the, exam panic set in. But I'd say that's the main thing to do, is just questions, and writing down like things that I was consistently struggling with on section 2, like what topics. I know I really still find difficult to this day is physics and maths. So I spent a little bit more time on that, because at the time as well, I was doing A-level chem and bio. So I was more comfortable with that content because it was all fresh in my head, whereas the other stuff wasn't. Also, another thing that people do is take too long questions. And because you can select, what the answer is, if you're not sure and you've spent like 3 minutes on a question, just tick a box, move on. If you have time at the end, you can go back because you can flag the questions. But I think it's really important there's no point spending ages on a question for 1 mark when you could have got 3 easy marks on other questions in the same amount of time. So you need to be strict with yourself, and once you're reaching that point, just move on, because it's not worth it. I think I remember actually in the exam, there was a certain type of, what was it? It was some maths questions that, I can't remember what type of maths question it was, but that consistently came up and I consistently struggled with it. And when it came up in the actual exam, I guessed that one straight away, didn't even try and moved on, because I just knew I was going to spend valuable minutes just reading it through and not taking it in and not understanding it. So I made that decision to do that. It's not something I'd say, to try and do. Always obviously try and answer the question, but you do have to be strict with yourself on timing. What I'll do is I'll do these questions. I'll go through these questions with you in a moment. But the other thing I want to make sure that you all understand is that it sounds like a scary exam, but it's not. You sit it and you think, oh, that was actually all right. And then it's over before you know it. And if at the end of the day, when you get your score, you're not happy with it, I just want you to know it is not the be all and end all. There are other things that they look at in your medical school application. Obviously, if you don't reach the cutoff, then you don't reach the cutoff, unfortunately. But like I've said before, if it's medicine is something you want to do and it takes you a little bit longer to get there, it's absolutely fine, because either way you're going to be 30 anyway, so you may as well be 30 doing something you enjoy. And again, this is all about if you practice enough, there's no way that you first of all, you can't fail this exam. Second of all, there's no way that you won't do decently if you do as much practice as possible and do all your past papers, because it's just, again, particularly for section 1, it's technique. So as soon as you've got that technique, you'll just get stronger and stronger during the questions, and you'll know how to apply your critical thinking knowledge to the questions, and then you'll save time in that exam as well. And then you'll also know what to expect, so you'll be more comfortable with it. So someone asked what my score is. I honestly cannot remember my scores for the life of me. And also it's worth noting, I can't remember my scores for undergrad, but I know for grad med it's be slightly different. But one thing I always think is try not to dwell too much on your score or other people's scores, as well as, if you ever go down the rabbit hole of looking at the student room and everyone's boasting their scores, like for example, I got 7s and 8s and 9s on these sections, it can get you down. So try not to worry about that too much and try to focus on your own learning, just because it's really easy to compare yourself to other people for medicine applications, and it's not necessarily the best use of time. as well as things are changing every year, cut-offs are changing every year, and the number of people who sit the BMAT is changing every year. So in terms of some practice questions here, I'm just showing you this because this is the kind of, do you get scrap paper for working out? That's a good question. I think I might have done, from what I remember, I think it was one piece of paper. You'll have to check, should say on their website. And again, you can send an email to ask. Got a whiteboard, okay, exactly. So yeah, that's useful. You also do get like a mini little calculator icon as well if you need to calculate anything, but you won't get a periodic table or anything like that. So in terms of this example question, I'm going to pause my sharing. So hopefully, just because I want to make sure I can see the chat and everything. So just let me know if you can still see if you can't see the question for whatever reason. So here we're looking at a theatre show called Gracie's World. In these questions, you'll notice a lot of fluff and a lot of additional information. So because of your time, you have to skim over it and pick out the key bits. So you've got 3 girls, Gracie, Sarah, and Rose, and they must be played by female performers. And then you've got Teddy, Graham, and Carl, and these characters must all be played by male performers. There are 2 guards, which can be played by either male or female, and each performer can play more than one character, but each character can only be played by one performer, which makes sense, right? So the performer who plays the role of Gracie can't play any other characters, and the table shows the characters involved in each scene. And then it's got an additional bit, which is useful here, saying in this year's production, the performer who plays Rosie also plays guard 1. Which of the following characters could be played by the same person in this year's production? So how I approach these questions is look at the options. So look at A to F, go through them and see if it's possible. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have a look at is you're seeing if Grace and Sarah could be played by the same person. So what we really want to do is we want to see if Grace and Sarah are in a, hang on a second, we've gone up, sorry. Can you just all let me know if you can still see that? I hope that's okay. Yeah, okay, cool. So the first question is actually trying to catch you out. So you see that on A it says Gracie and Sarah, but it's also worth noting in that top bit of text says the performer who plays the role of Gracie cannot play any other characters. So the same person can't both play Gracie and Sarah. So that means we know it's not A, okay? Now moving on to B, Teddy and guard 1. Can anyone tell me if they think Teddy and guard 1 can play together? So it can be played by the same person. No, yeah, exactly. Because if we look at scene 1, Teddy and guard 1 are in the same scene. So you can't have 2 people playing 2 people at once. So we know it's not that one. Again, for Sarah and guard 1, what do we think? No, exactly. So now we'll move on to D. So we've got Graham and Carl. Can Graham and Carl be played by the same people? Sorry, played by the same person. So in this case, the answer is yes. So luckily, because we've got D, then we don't have, if it depends, if you have time, you can go through E and F as well. But I find that in these questions, you can just move on if you've reached the point where you know that they can both be played by the same person. Depends what time you have, because they don't appear in a scene together either. So it makes sense for them to be able to be played by the same person. Okay. Next, so this one's a completely different style of question. This again is all in section 1. So it's a wide range of kind of skills that they're asking you to look at here. This one, I have no specific technique to help you answer this. I just want you guys to have a look and tell me what you think. So a piece of the puzzle is shown, and which of the following blocks A, B, C, or D could fit onto the piece to make a solid cube? So I'll give you a minute, take your time to have a look, and I just want you to put in the chat what you think. Again, no pressure at all to get it right. This is probably the first kind of question you've seen of this style, so just have a go. So we've got A and B so far. What I'm going to see is I'm going to see if I can I use a laser pen? Oh, perfect. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. So how I approached this one is I had a look at the shape along here and tried to see what could fit into it. So I tried to go along this edge, and I knew something was going to have to kind of be this shape. Oh, let me just close this chat so I knew something would have to kind of come along this shape, kind of come across here. If you think about a block, so if this is the bottom piece, this piece of the puzzle, and you're looking at A, B, C, or D, A, B, C, or D needs to be able to fit on top like this so it can link in and make a cube. So I thought the top part is going to kind of come out here. It's going to have a lower bit here, will then go up and then come onto this bit. And I was thinking, remember as well, you have to think about orientation as well for these shapes. So I kind of thought what would match that. And I knew it was going to have a long skinny bit here to kind of fit through this block and this block. And then they're going to have a level here and then a higher level here. So I thought through this, you could see this long bit. If you orient this 90 degrees clockwise, then this could fit through. This is a slightly higher level than this one. And I thought that might work. Again, I haven't really explained that very well, to be honest. And the answer for this question is D, but this just shows you an example. Let me get rid of my laser pointer. I don't think I can. Oh well, I'm trying to access that Q&A. So it's ended up being D. I haven't explained that very well, so I apologize for that. But these kind of shape questions, it really helps if you can try and visualize them in your head. I found these quite difficult to start with, and you'll have other questions that will be like puzzle pieces or clock faces and different things like this. And with these, you kind of just have to practice, because I can't really explain the cheat code to get you to kind of understand it. It kind of just, that's just the way it kind of works, just have to practice. It was also worth noting that this would be this face of D, so this face would be face down on top of this piece over here, if that kind of helps. So when I explained the orientation, I actually did that wrong. So this would be face down on top of this piece. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And the correct answer is D, for those of you who didn't get it. Okay, right, let's move on. Again, I'm looking at time and I'm going to stay for 10 minutes behind at the end, so I hope that helps you guys. Let's turn off this laser pointer. Okay, so again, another bit of a wordy question here. Luckily, the opening statement is short, so we can have enough time to read that. We don't have to worry about picking out information out of a large chunk of text. So it says, and there were 61 million prescriptions for the antidepressant drugs in the UK in 2015. This was double the number of prescriptions in 2005. And then almost a separate statement says, in 2014, there were 1.1 million mental health disability claimants. This was double the number in 1995. So what it's asking you to do is, what can be drawn as a conclusion from the above information? Which of these statements, A to D? So A says, whilst antidepressant drugs can help combat mental illness, in the short term, data suggests that in the long term, their use leads to worse outcomes for patients. So this is quite a quite a strong statement. And you're trying to think can I infer that from this information here? The answer is not really, because there's nothing to do with worse outcomes. And in the actual statement, it's not really inferring that the number of antidepressant drugs also, might be influencing the mental health disability claimants. So that's what, if it's anything that's ever really, really strong statement in here, always be quite wary of that when you're coming up with your answer. Okay. And next, we've got doctors are being encouraged to prescribe drug treatment. Well, first of all, that isn't really suggested in this statement at all for people suffering from depression, regardless of how effective a treatment is. And we can't really infer that from the passage. There's nothing really to suggest that. For C, antidepressant drugs are clearly not an effective solution in long-term treatment of mental illness. Well, it's not inferring that. It's not saying, well, because there's loads of more people being prescribed antidepressants and there's loads more disability claimants, it means that we're prescribing more drugs, but it's not helping, and that's why they're claiming disability. You can't really infer that from the passage either. So looking at D, it says figures for drug prescription disability claimants provide no evidence that antidepressant drugs are improving long-term mental health of people in the UK. And the answer is yes, that this D best describes the argument in this above information, the conclusion, because what's important in D, it's not actually stating an argument, it's just saying that there's no evidence that drugs are improving the long-term mental health of people in the UK, which is true because it's telling you these statements, but it's not inferring anything from them. So you can say that these figures aren't supporting the statement that they are helping improve mental health, but likewise, they're not saying that they worsen mental health either, because the other three are kind of suggesting that they're hindering mental health, if that makes sense. So that's kind of a way to think about these questions, but I know it's quite difficult. So yeah, it's D for this one. Okay, I'm going to let you guys read this one, and again, just put in the chat what you think. I'll read it out loud for people at home. So researchers have found that middle-aged men with bigger waist measurements have an increased risk of developing prostate cancer. They found that for every extra 10 centimeters a man had on his waist, his risk of developing the most aggressive form of prostate cancer was raised by 13%. Early results suggest that increased risk is linked with the disruption to testosterone and other hormones that occur with weight gain. This shows that middle-aged men can prevent the development of prostate cancer by eating a healthy diet and taking regular exercise. So it's really important to read the question here, because it's not asking which statement supports this, but it's asking you which of the following, A, B, C, or D, expresses a flaw in the above argument. So we're trying to find a flaw in this argument. So I'll give you guys a moment to read those options, and then someone said the screen. Oh, sorry about that. If you can't see that, I'll give you all a moment to read this. Hopefully you can all see this question. I'll give you 2 minutes in total to read that statement again. I know I read it out loud, but you couldn't see it, so I'm sorry about that. And if you look at options A, B, C, or D, and remember, we're trying to find the one that shows a flaw in the above statement. I also want you to particularly look at that last sentence of that statement. This shows that middle-aged men can prevent the development of prostate cancer by eating a healthy diet and taking regular exercise. And just question yourself if that's true. Yeah, so a couple of you have put C. Perfect, exactly. So what this statement is saying, you can prevent prostate cancer because you're at risk of getting more aggressive form of prostate cancer if you've got higher waist circumference. Therefore, if you have a lower waist circumference, you're at less risk of getting the most aggressive form of prostate cancer. First of all, we don't know if that's true because we don't know that there's a direct correlation between weight circumference and getting prostate cancer, because this is talking about the risk of developing the most aggressive form. So it's not saying you're definitely going to get it, and it's also not saying all prostate cancer, saying the most aggressive form of prostate cancers. Second of all, it's inferring from that information that if you eat a healthy diet and take regular exercise, that you won't develop prostate cancer. And as we know, people get cancers for lots of reasons, including environment, including genetic, including like loads of things that are out of their control. And if someone has cancer, we can't necessarily say that there's one specific thing that's caused them to have it or caused them to be at higher risk. So the best statement that shows a flaw in this argument is assuming that losing weight is sufficient to avoid developing prostate cancer. So well done, everyone. That was great. Okay, this is an example of one of the chemistry questions. So again, like I said, you need to have sufficient knowledge of the periodic table. So I'll give you guys a moment to read this. So someone said F. Do we have any other answers as well? Give you 10 more seconds. So the answer to this one is actually 1 is H. So 1, 2, and 3 are correct. So yes, you have to have knowledge about the properties of group 1 metals, but it can also be worked out. So if you think about the group 1 elements, as you go down the group, the outer shell electrons are further away from that positively charged nucleus in the middle, right? So therefore they get more shielding. So that basically means that they're less attracted to that nucleus, and they're more likely or easier for them to lose those electrons. So that means the group 1 metal with the largest atomic number, which is obviously going to be at the bottom of the group because they increase in number as you go down, that's going to be the most reactive and therefore the most easily oxidized. So we know 3 is correct. Okay. And the same thing here, we're thinking about if it's also finds it more easy to lose electrons, you're also thinking that it could also have the most vigorous reaction with cold water, because again, it's going to be more reactive, if that makes sense. Okay. And lastly, it's asking, so 2 says its atom has the same number of electrons in its highest occupied energy level as other members of the group. And we know that's true. Yeah, because they all have 1 electron in the outer shell, hence why they're all in group 1. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Okay, and I'm aware that it's 10 past, so I'm just going to give you guys one more question. So this one says, again, this is for your section A. So you have 2 credit cards, each of which has a 4-digit PIN. Together, the 2 pins consist of 8 different non-zero digits, whilst the 4 digits of each of them individually add up to 19. So you've got 4 numbers on one card add up to 19, 4 numbers on another card add up to 19. None of them can be the same number, and because they're all single digits as well. So these are numbers 1 to 9. And the question is not only asking you to work out this, but it's also asking you to work out which non-zero digit do neither of the 2 pins contain. So again, I'll give you all a moment to think about that. If you're not sure, don't worry, we'll talk it through. And also, while I've got you here for a question that someone asked about what's the best score in BMAT for getting into Oxford or Cambridge, I know Oxford and Cambridge are slightly different, but from having a look on Oxford's website, what they say is most people should aim for most students kind of working around a score of 6 for sections 1 and 2. And the reason why I'm talking about sections 1 and 2 is because they're the most important ones, because Oxford, for example, give most weighting of the BMAT score to your sections 1 and 2, and they give less weighting to your essay score. They do say, however, some students do get 7s, but again, that's quite vague. So they've basically just said, you know, there's a rough guide of working towards a 6, but 7's still fairly rare. But you just want to increase your chances of obtaining a higher score to get shortlisted. But Oxford focus a lot more on GCSEs, whereas Cambridge focuses a lot more on your A levels in terms of predicted A-level grades or AS grades, whereas Oxford, I know, score your GCSEs separately. And the other thing worth noting is, I know I was talking about cutoff, but Oxford actually don't have a specific cutoff. They just kind of say, you know, you should be aiming for 6s or 7s. So that's why it's a bit vague. And that's why you should just aim to do the best you can. Someone asks as well, which ones are radioactive? If you mean in group 1, I think the only one that's radioactive is francium, which is like the one at the very bottom, which is like the most reactive and radioactive, technically, I think. Okay, so do other BMAT units or section they have what higher weightage on? Some of them may do. It will say on their website, they'll have a specific page for medicine and they'll say on there. And then you might also be able to access, sometimes they publish charts saying like what the average BMAT score was. And they also might put what their cutoffs were, or what the highest scoring applicant got and what the lowest scoring applicant got who was shortlisted. It does vary. They're kind of entitled to reveal as much information as they want, but have a look on their specific websites. So the answer for this question is D, which is 7. So the easiest way to kind of manage this question is consider like both credit cards together, both PIN numbers 19 plus 19 come up to a total of 38 when adding the 8 numbers. So think about them together rather than 2 separate cards. Likewise, when I first did this question by myself, I just kind of worked out in my head and just kept adding random numbers and seeing if they worked out, which probably isn't the most productive way to do it. So in terms of a more structured way, total is 38 of the 8 numbers added together. So, you know, 8 numbers, all different numbers, non-zero numbers. So between 1 and 9, add up to 38, okay? And we can easily just like add up the numbers and then just eliminate one option each time to find it, okay? So in terms of working it out, you can try and delete 1 and then delete 2 and then delete 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, okay? And see what kind of works out that way. So for example, you could see if we eliminate 1 first of all, and then we try and work out how to eliminate some of the other numbers, we know that if we eliminate 3, for example, then your total won't equal 38, it will equal, I think, 42. And then if you eliminate 5, again, it doesn't give you 38, it gives you 40. And if you eliminate 7, you can see it still gives you 38. So therefore D is the correct answer. And I can go back and check that, is go through and calculate them. So I think if your numbers on your, I think I wrote down, on the notes. So your two PIN numbers could be 1, 3, 6, and 9 for one of the cards, and 2, 4, 5, and 8 for another one of the cards, if that makes sense. But you just need to work out what kind of technique works for you for these questions. Do you see what I mean though? By doing these examples, you can see they do make you think, and they are kind of a bit strange, some of them. Lastly, I'm aware that we're over time, so I'll keep this brief. For section 3 on the essays, this is some example of some of the questions you could be asked. It's all to do with like philosophy and science and medicine. So you could be asked, if you're not keen on philosophical questions, you can avoid those. For example, that last one, political correctness kills discussion. You want to explain the statement, argue against it with examples, and argue for it. And then you have your conclusion: to what extent is political correctness necessary? You only have half an hour to do this, bear in mind, so it's going to be a short essay. I'd probably not pick that one because I don't even know where to start with that. I'd probably read through them and I'd think what things I got ideas popping into my head for first. So I'd probably do something about the self-inflicted illnesses. So this is a very strong statement saying they should be given less coverage within the NHS, as these prevent money and resources from going to those who have no influence on the cause of their illness. So explain the reasoning behind the statements. You talk a little bit about it, maybe give some examples of what self-inflicted illnesses are, how we define those. Why does it mean less money and resources for other people? What do we mean of people who have no influence on the cause of their illness, and how is that fair? And you're talking here, you can talk about like patients' best interests and acting in beneficence for a patient, allowing fair and equitable treatment for all, everyone as well, thinking about what the purposes of the NHS, and is that in line with the NHS values by doing that. How much money would it save? How can we say someone's condition is self-inflicted when there's lots of influence on it? You could say, oh, this person smoked for 50 years and now they've got lung cancer, so it's self-inflicted. Whereas actually it might be a genetic component to that. And how are we to say that person's any less deserving of a treatment with someone with the same condition, but who hasn't had those lifestyle choices, So it's worth kind of bearing in mind all these kind of arguments when making your plan. I'd select a question, do like 2 or 3 arguments for each side. Make sure you answer the question as well. So you do need to explain the reasoning behind this statement, argue, and then do you agree? And then you need to have a brief conclusion. Your conclusion probably needs to be like 2 or 3 sentences, if that. And again, in your conclusions, don't add any more additional information. But I hope that makes sense for these. There's loads and loads of examples you can find online. How I'd prepare for this section is find all of the past paper essay questions and try and make plans for all of them, even the ones that you're not very comfortable with, because that will just help you when it comes to the real thing with just being more confident. You can reference books or quotes or anything like that in these. Only do it if it kind of adds to your argument, and by no means do you need to do additional reading to do well in this essay. You can have common sense and apply a lot of it, but it's all about making a really solid argument, arguing against it. And if you think about it, you don't have a lot of words, you don't have a lot of time, you just need to be really clear, and you physically don't have enough time or space for waffling. So I always waffle in my essays, so I found this really difficult. And I think towards the end I'd done like about 5 practice essays before I did the real exam. You probably could do or should do more. I just didn't, because I was just finding it quite long to just constantly write these essays. So instead I just tried to do plans for the questions I wasn't as comfortable with. And again, you can find examples online, and you can discuss these kind of questions with friends or family to get some other kind of ideas for arguments. Someone said to kind of discuss the second question appearing on the screen. So there are now many different kinds of internet sites and apps for offering medical advice. They all share one thing in common: they do more harm than good. So why might online source medical advice do more harm than good? So you're thinking about who's giving the medical advice. Is it outdated? Is it on a website where everyone can access and they're not necessarily medical professionals? Is it going to upset someone by reading about conditions that they don't have knowledge of and therefore can't get reassurance? Because a website will tell you all the scary things and side effects and everything that go wrong, but can't necessarily say, it's okay, we are going to do some tests, we are going to do this, we can rule this out. Whereas if you're interacting with a healthcare professional on a face-to-face basis, then it's more of a conversation, whereas people can kind of go down a rabbit hole on the internet of having that information. However, you can argue on the other side that there are like forums where people can talk about chronic pain or chronic conditions and try and get support from people who have experience of those conditions, and that does more good. Medical advice as well, it depends what you mean by medical advice. You can also think of lifestyle changes and support with eating more healthily or quitting smoking, or hearing from people who have had successful weight loss stories or have had success in managing their endometriosis and things like that, and stuff like that can be good. So how I'd break down this question is think about internet sites and apps offering medical advice. Think about ones that you think of as good, ones that you think of as bad, to bear in mind as examples, because you'd want to use examples in this question. And when you think of doing harm, you're thinking of it in what way? How would someone come to harm by reading these? What negative impact can it have on someone? And if you're thinking about comparing that as well with, like I said, having different interactions with healthcare providers where they can have a discussion rather than reading on the internet. Also thinking about how if someone can't get a GP appointment, they might be able to have a look online, or someone might be likewise also be worrying themselves for Googling their symptoms and believing they have a lot more serious condition than they actually do have. So that's a harm. So there's obviously a lot of ideas that I've thrown out there, and you'd want to structure it in a proper way. But in terms of this question, it's really good to have examples of conditions and examples of harm and examples of those resources, if that makes sense. And yes, you can use more than one example in these types of questions. I do like two or three, but again, bearing in mind the space that you've got. So with these kind of essays, they're very snappy and you're very to the point. You're not using a lot of like unnecessary fluff in these essays. Is it recommended to plan it out first? I know people who just plan it in their heads, think of it, and just prefer to start writing straight away. Whereas I took 5 minutes to decide on the question and to make a plan. And I just jotted down a few bullet points just because I had lots of stuff going on in my head, and I wrote it down so I could forget about it and start writing, and then I could refer back to it. It's not necessary, but it's up to you really with what helps you. If you find yourself getting overwhelmed, then just write a few ideas down for each of the questions and then decide if you really are overwhelmed. But I'd say you won't want to be spending more than 5 minutes on it, because you've got to write your essay as well and proofread it ideally at the end. So I went through these points before. I'll go back to the page with the books just in case any of you wanted to write those down. I'm sorry that we overran. So I just want to say thank you everyone for joining. I really hope it was helpful. I know that this time is really difficult with medical admissions, and I've been there and I know how stressful it is, but you'll all be absolutely fine. The key to this is just not to cram, do it little and often, and if you nail the exam techniques, you'll get in there and you'll just go through the motions, you'll come out of it, it'll go by in the blink of an eye and you'll get your score, and hopefully you'll be happy with it. But again, if you're not, it's not the end of the world. Remember, test scores aren't the be all and end all. If you can't think of anything for any of the three, honestly, just think about what you do know. So if one of the questions, like the statement that we had before, says, what does this statement mean? Then just do an explanation of what you think the statement means. Then you might find ideas come to you. It is important just to try and write something, but hopefully by practicing, you'll be able to start getting the ball rolling with being able to think of these things on your feet. Hopefully that helps. And again, if you read some example essays online, write notes down of what you think was good about the argument and what was bad. A lot of this, it's not only just the content you write about, but how you argue, and can you write an effective essay in a short amount of time? That's also what's important in this. So if you have those principles, then you'll be able to build up on them. Does anyone else have any more questions? Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy your afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.